Okay, yes, it's Warehouse Luigi. So let's see that, because you did forward me the video of the fire blazing. They took out the entire warehouse.
Here we go.
Should have paid us enough to fucking live. You know, we may not get paid enough to fucking live, but these bitches dirt cheap. All you had to do was pay us enough to live. All you had to do was pay us enough to fucking live. All you had to do was pay us enough to live. There goes your inventory.
And there it went.
Oh yeah, nobody's convicting him. You're not gonna, if he gets arrested and he gets, like, I'd be shocked. They're not going to find
tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars down the tube. And all for what? Because, as it turns out, it's a pretty simple concept. Just pay us to fucking live. Really a lot to ask, isn't it? Well, you should know that in this broken system that is falling apart, you should know exactly who these people are.
So who owns this company? What company is that?
NFI.
Is that that was the warehouse? Was an NFI warehouse? Is that
it is an NFI warehouse and distribution site.
Okay.
CEO Sidney Brown, indicted in sweeping New Jersey case against political giant. The CEO is one of 6 defendants in case focused on redeveloping the Camden waterfront, where TL Carrier is headquartered. So it turns out.
And this is dated when? Which, like, let's, you know.
Summer of 2024.
Okay.
We see it, Colin. NFI CEO Sidney Brown, a member of the family that has owned the truckload carrier for more than 90 years. Kimberly-Clark, I believe, owns the industrial building that NFI operates out of. So they basically lease the property from Kimberly-Clark and then they distribute it around the country. Kleenex, a whole bunch of, different necessities, if you will. So anyway, they've owned this truckload carrier for more than 90 years. Brown was indicted this week, this being the beginning of summer 2024, as part of a broad investigation of a major New Jersey power broker. While NFI is not a target of the investigation, the indictment says the truckload carrier received more than $7 million in financial benefits as a result of receiving tax credits for moving its headquarters into the Triad 1828 Center on Cooper Street in Camden, New Jersey, which prosecutors say became possible only through the hardball tactics of South Jersey's George Norcross and his brother Philip. Now, if anybody knows anything about George Norcross, they would know that he is a very powerful, I think he may be a former congressman now, but the Norcrosses are notorious for controlling the waterfront in South Jersey between Camden and Philadelphia. This has been going on for decades. So NFI also has further tax credits to claim. There are no legal issues with the credits. Norcross has long been described as a Democratic power broker, though he held no public office and never okay, so then I guess this is his brother then that he's talking about. On NFI's website, the company says it is the country's 6th largest dedicated carrier and the 4th largest warehouse provider, and that it has more than 16,000 employees. The net worth of Mr. Brown is over $1 billion. Spokesman for the company declined to comment. So what is the enterprise? The indictment portrays Brown as a member of what prosecutors call the Norcross enterprise, without being one of its leaders or directly engaging in what the indictment portrays are often threatening steps some members of the enterprise took. That allegedly.
So if they're using the phrase enterprise, then that says that it's a RICO case. Okay, like that screams a RICO case. Is this federal or state? This is state?
That's a good question, but it crosses state lines, I think. So we'll find out
Okay, so
shortly.
then if it's something that crosses state lines, then it would be a federal, it
Federal
would be
case,
federal
correct.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And if they're using the phrasing enterprise, they're working to prove a RICO case. And that's very, very specific. It's a RICO is a very specific statute that certain criteria has to be made to make a case, which is one of the reasons they're using that wording. Just as but anyway, this is from 24. So we could probably easily look up and see what they were charged with. But I would assume it was a RICO charge.
Brown
Continue.
has direct ties to George Norcross through Cooper Health, a South Jersey health system where Norcross is chairman of the board of trustees and Brown is a member of the board. Brown also described in the indictment as a member of the group that ultimately bought not only Triad 1828 Center, but also the Ferry Terminal Building and 11 Cooper in Camden. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, just in case you're wondering why we advocate for single-payer healthcare, because if single-payer healthcare existed, this bullshit wouldn't exist. So just keep that in mind.
Lee Argent, arson is federal, I think. Arson is just the name of a crime. So, for example, it's going to be against the penal code in every single state. So it will be a state crime, but you could also have charges in a federal court for arson if it were on a federal building, if somehow it interfered in interstate commerce, then they could claim that the federal court has jurisdiction. But arson in and of itself is a criminal act, and it would be prosecuted at the state level as well. So if just regular Joe goes and sets fire to his neighbor's house in whatever state that is, they're still going to be charged under state law. It's a state crime for arson. So I don't know. Right. I thought it was a teachable moment.
The 111-page indictment mostly focuses on the interaction between the group led by the Norcross brothers, George in particular, and various state and local officials in redevelopment efforts along the Camden waterfront. They've been trying to redevelop the Camden waterfront for decades. The city directly across the Delaware River from Philadelphia was once a major manufacturing site that over the years saw such manufacturers as Campbell Soup and RCA Victor depart for other locations as it sank into poverty and population decline after I passed NAFTA in 1993. So don't you ever forget the role that I played in making sure that that entire city fell by the wayside. 6 people indicted are George and Philip Norcross, Brown, former Camden Mayor Dana Redd, George Norcross's personal attorney, William Tambusi. Gee, I wonder who he represents. And John O'Donnell, an executive in an organization that, like NFI, moved into Triad 1828, and who's also described in the indictment as a member of the group that owns some of the Camden real estate. That is the focus of the charges.
Okay, so can we just, I mean, now that we know who this guy is from this fire, right? So we've traced that. What's the current status of this? Because it's at this point, it's kind of silly to read when we can just look up what the status of this case is. Because now it's already we're 2 years in. So now what's the date on
this? So this is, hang on a minute. So Sid Brown, a trucking magnate and co-defendant in George Norcross's racketeering case, pleads not guilty, of course.
Told you it was a RICO case.
NFI CEO Sid Brown, making his first court appearance since the charges were announced in June, pleaded not guilty Wednesday to charges of racketeering, conspiracy, extortion, and related counts. Colin, show in on this guy's face. Okay, hold it right there.
Oh.
This is the person that the arson employee was addressing.
Okay. This is the owner of that distribution center. This is
Correct.
The douchebag that doesn't think people deserve a living wage.
The guy who's going through a RICO federal indictment does not believe in paying his employees enough to live.
This is how it ties together. This is the guy who the arsonists were speaking to, saying, all you had to do was give us enough money to live. And he just couldn't see fit to do that. So his warehouse just went up in smoke. So was he convicted?
I don't know.
That's what we need
let's
to
see
see
where
here.
we
Wait,
are.
go. What's the date? What's the date? Okay. So now we're, all right. So that's same year, months later.
Let me see if there is anything new.
Because the whole point is, I think, was that this was the same piece of shit.
We'll get to it in a second. I'll pull it, but let me
Okay.
just set the stage here. For almost 30 years, Sidney Brown has served as chief executive of a family business that started as a one dump truck gravel hauler in Vineland during the Great Depression and has since grown into one of the largest trucking and freight service companies in the U.S. Brown's company, National Freight Inc., known as NFI, with sales now topping $3.5 billion a year, started a new chapter in its long history in 2017 when it announced it was relocating its corporate headquarters to Camden. Again, bribery here, bribery there.
So where was it? It was originally, I mean, is that Trenton? Is that where it went from Trenton to
May
Camden?
have
Is
been
that
on the, yeah, or may have been on the Pennsylvania side. I'm trying to read more into
okay?
this. Taking part in the waterfront redevelopment plan by George Norcross III. Again, guys, this is the thing. There's Debbie Wasserman Schultzes everywhere. They're all over the fucking place. George Norcross is the same. He's a crooked Democratic Party establishment power broker. The whole fucking family. They run the waterfront in South Jersey. They're not the Sopranos, but man, they sure like to pretend that they are. The South Jersey Democratic power broker and insurance executive, now Brown, 67, has been indicted alongside Norcross and 4 others on state racketeering charges that accuse them of abusing their political power to squeeze out rival developers and obtain valuable real estate. And if we have to cap a few people along the way and toss them into the Delaware River, then that's just the cost of doing business. That's capitalism, baby.
Well, now the irony of this, or the sickness in this, really, is that the amount of damage that these total pieces of shit did in their actions in terms of financial to other people, to working people, the damage that what they did caused, or to what they did in terms of gentrification when they moved there, whoever knows, however much damage they did, I guarantee you it so far outweighs the damage of that guy's warehouse being set on fire. And yet the decorum people would all somehow think that setting the fire, well, that's a crime, which it is. But yet all these other things, which a lot of them aren't even illegal, somehow that's okay. Or he'll get a slap on the wrist.
Look, I'm wondering if the guy who started the arson fire even knows who this guy is, like even knows that this guy that he works for is a federal criminal.
Maybe not.
So he's been indicted along with Norcross. 4 others for the racketeering charges accuse him of abusing their power. Brown making his first court appearance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mercer County Superior Court, which is where Trenton is located. Brown of Philadelphia, so I was right, it is Philadelphia, declined to comment as he left the courtroom in Trenton. In a statement issued shortly after the proceeding, his attorney, Lawrence S. Lustberg, said Sidney Brown pleaded, I'm not going to stop. I'm not, because it isn't a conspiracy anymore. It is what it is. And yes,
I just think
Sidney
it's
Brown,
it's such a good lawyer name. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't make up a better lawyer name. It's good.
They're going to stick together till the bitter end. Sidney Brown pleaded not guilty today because he is not guilty. Sid has in fact done absolutely nothing wrong. He is proud to be an important part of the revitalization of Camden through his investment in residential and commercial real estate, that of which pretty much nobody can afford, which has transformed the city's waterfront.
I'm sure it has.
It is just a matter of time before he is exonerated. Well, since you asked.
Okay, Lipschitz literally was the name of the rabbi at Beth Torah in North Miami Beach when I was a kid. It was a conservative shul in North Miami Beach, and it was Rabbi Lipschitz. I shit you not, that was his name.
Does his lip shit?
I
Is he shit
am telling you that it was Rabbi Lipschitz. That wasn't that's a real name.
So I want to bring this all full circle, and whether or not, again, this has any real legitimate tie-in to the actual arson fire, I'm going to say this about Sidney Brown so that you all know. Yes, Sidney Brown is Jewish, and they are a very prominent, affluent contributor to the state of Israel, including the Beth Israel Synagogue in South Jersey, which is, again, one of those just more noted pro-Israel conservative synagogues. And you might be wondering, since this employee decided to set fire and cost the Browns tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, which of course I'm sure they'll make up for in insurance because that's
oh, please. They'll end up profiting off of that.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, next thing you know, you find out he paid the guy off. He was trying to get a squeeze in. Would you care to guess what actually happened with this indictment?
Where was that fire? Where was this fire?
Ontario, California.
In California, Henry.
So this should come as no surprise to anybody. New Jersey ends its prosecution of NFI CEO Brown and 5 others. Original indictment was tossed out once and affirmed on appeal. New acting attorney general drops the curtain on further prosecution.
I'd like to know why.
Oh, well, let's get to it. Let's see if there is.
I'd like to know what the grounds were. Yeah, what we have here.
The state's acting attorney general, Jennifer Davenport, has decided not to appeal a recent decision by the Appellate Division of New Jersey Superior Court that upheld an earlier dismissal of the racketeering case against Brown and 5 others over development rights in the South New Jersey city of Camden. Our office has decided not to seek review from the New Jersey City. They don't even want to review it from the Jersey Superior Court in State versus Norcross. The Attorney General's office said in a prepared statement, referring to the formal name of the case, in light of the appellate's decision, we have concluded that our prosecutorial resources would be best spent on other matters. I
have some questions. I have some questions for the state attorney. RICO is a very, very difficult statute to prove. And like I said, it's very specific. It has very specific elements that have to be met. It's been so many years since I studied a RICO case. But the point I'm making is that that's an exceptionally hard charge to prove, whereas there would probably be a lot of lesser charges that would be easier to prove. So what I would be curious about is what else were they charged with besides racketeering? And if nothing else, like let's say hypothetically, that was the basis of their whole case was the racketeering and there was no, okay, this is hard. This is why I'm not a law professor. But if that's the whole basis of their case and there were no other charges, it almost says to me that they intentionally did that, knowing that they wouldn't be able to make that case and knowing that it would get dismissed. Because otherwise, it seems like you would attempt to at least charge a lot more provable crimes that would have to be within that RICO statute anyway, because the RICO statute includes multiple other crimes. So yeah, I would need to know a lot more about this.
Acting Attorney General Davenport moved into the role with the recent inauguration of Mickey Sherrill as the state's governor. Mickey Sherrill is also somebody who thinks very highly of the state of Israel. Her predecessor, Matthew Platkin, brought the case against Norcross and his associates. Sherrill is a Democrat and was her predecessor, Phil Murphy. So choosing not to appeal the case further cannot be seen as a result of a change in the political party heading into the state government. No, that just makes it worse.
No, that just shows that it's all the same and it doesn't matter. This is an oligarchy thing, not a political party thing.
Just like Trump does.
Right. Exactly.
Brown, whose family founded NFI and controls the company, was enough of a side defendant in the case that the dismissal just under a year ago of the indictment brought in June of 24 by then Attorney General Plotkin led the court to say of Brown and one other defendant. What did these 2 men do? They bribed people so that they can control everything, and they have proven it in very few words that that is exactly what was happening. And we all know that this is something that's been going on for decades with trying to redevelop Camden at the water.
Clearly they didn't prove it, because if they proved it, then we wouldn't be here. So
Let's see if there's anything else here.
I mean, this is a very typical pay to play situation. Developer, any type of gentrification, those people that are involved in that, they already have coverage from the judicial system. They're all, it's all connected. But that's another difference between state and federal. Now, could, depending on what this crime was, could there be a federal case? Maybe. I don't know. But chances are they're not going to seek it. And the truth is, if the feds seek it, they win it. Feds don't charge a case that they don't win. Their rate is like 99%, whereas state court, the state attorney, they don't want to.
Don't forget how absolutely effed up the justice system is, especially with the FBI. And on top of everything else, don't think for a second that somebody like Brown is not exceptionally powerful, not just because of his ties to Israel, but because of how wealthy he is. And once you get to that level of wealth, you basically control the system. And if you crush your workers in the process, no one's going to bring any labor law violations against you, even if it is in the state of California, because this is all for show. This isn't real. We are living in a situation where the system cannot be resuscitated, and it shouldn't be. You have to form, so you have to start again. You have got to try something else. So in conclusion, but as for Brown, the few references to him in the original indictment portrayed him mostly as no more than a participant in various meetings in which the development rights back. Again, one thing about these guys, they do cover. You don't get to that level of wealth and power if you don't know how to cover your tracks. Just like
they have
Lussberg.
people that do this stuff for them.
Exactly. If someone's going down, it's not him. I can assure you of that. No. And the tax credits that went along with it were discussed. The development eventually led to the construction of the Triad 1828 Center, which is where NFI is now headquartered.
Isn't that interesting?
But today somebody...
Karma. That's karma.
Yeah. And somebody today decided to say, I'm not going to take this sitting down, and I don't care how long I go to prison for if that's what's going to happen. I want everyone to know who Sidney Brown is. I didn't know who he was before this story, but I do now. And now a lot of other people are going to know who he is. And he is a criminal.